Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eugene Chieng, and this is the Insight. Tonight on the Insight, we review the 2021 budget, 2021-2022 budget, in line with the Vision 2030. And of course, right here in the Insight, in June 10th, 2008, the then President Mwai Kibaki launched a comprehensive economic blueprint, the Kenya Vision 2030. In 2030, the country will be an industrializing middle-income economy, providing a high quality of life. This was to be achieved through the realization of planned economic, social, and political development. With its implementation lifespan past halfway, we review the journey of this Vision 2030 today in relation to the budget 2021-2022. On the show tonight, we have two guests. That is PDG Masu Anthony, who is the Secretary General of Vijana Economic Front. We have with us CPA Ronald Bosi, who is a Group Managing Partner at Ronald LLP East Africa. He is an entrepreneur and as well, he is an auditor. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show tonight. And of course, I'd love us to start because the show starts right now. Well, PDG Masu, I'd love you to maybe enlighten the public what the Vision 2030 is all about, because I believe that what the public know and understand about the Vision 2030 is quite different. Tell us, is the Vision 2030 a program? Is it a project? Is it an event? Is it a process? And does it end in 2030?
The unveiling of the Vision 2030 was the result of the strategic development goals for global economic recovery that came after the economic slump in 2008. And Kenya, just like most other countries in the world, joined this bandwagon of hope to try and change the economic fortunes after some problems they had. Apart from the global economic problem, we had the post-election violence that crippled the economy. And so after peace resumed, the president thought it best, President Mwai Kibaki, to come up with a strategic plan to ensure that by 2030, the country is at par with the highly developing nations in terms of provision of social services, such as healthcare, housing, in terms of the economic spectrum, whether we are sustainable as an economy, and the political sector. And that is what the subsequent governments have been working towards achieving through their different policies and programs.
Okay, so is it a process? Is it what is it? Does it
end
in 2030?
It's a strategic economic development plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Bosi, you mind telling us the pillars majorly which the Vision 2030 were founded in?
Okay, thank you, Philip. What I will say about the Vision 2030, I believe it's one of the best things that has ever happened to this country. Recently, in Tanzanian parliament, I had them talking about coming up with their strategic plan because of the various differences that different political regimes have had. So I believe that Vision 2030 is one of the most precise documents that explains what will become of the Kenyan economy, especially in a bid to become the medium development economy. And they developed actually three pillars. We had the political pillar, the social pillar, and the economic pillar. Under the political pillar is the transformation of our political systems and vehicles so that we have actually healthy political system that contributes towards development of human being within this country. The social pillar, and we have the economic pillar that actually will lead to the transformation of the economy to a more sustainable levels.
I've heard you talking about Tanzania, and
Yes.
of course, PDG Masu also said that Kenya joined a bandwagon. Yes. Does it mean that Vision 2030 is not only in Kenya?
No. When I say bandwagon, it's because the UN actually developed a strategic blueprint for economic recovery after the collapse of the global economy in 2008. So
Was it only in Kenya?
by saying they jumped on this bandwagon,
Yes.
Kenya decided that we are also taking this opportunity.
Okay.
We have had as much problems as other nations have had, and if we can actually borrow some leaves from this blueprint and fine-tune it with our local climate, then actually we might have a proper plan that can work for us into 2030. So the biggest problems always arise in whether we are actually on the path or we are slugging on the way.
Okay, Mr. Bosi, we know that Kenya's long-term development blueprint, that is the Vision 2030, is implemented through 5-year medium-term plans. So that is the MTPs, and we are currently in the third MTP of 2018-2022. So where the president introduced the Big Four agenda. Do you see ourselves through the Big Four agendas achieving the Vision 2030?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the achieving the Vision 2030
Yes.
through the Big Four agenda,
Yes.
of course the Big Four agenda is a good move in terms of trying to activate our economy, housing, talking about the healthcare system, talking about the education system and all that. But we are, of course, we are very far much behind in terms of the attainment of Vision 2030. And you look at it because Vision 2030 is all about the quality of life of the citizens or the people of Kenya.
Okay.
And the quality of life basically means people can access to good health, people can access to quality housing, people have access to clean water. But as you look at it, still we are very far much behind. If you walk into some of the Nairobi slums in Nairobi, like people in Kibra, people in some of the slums in Mukuru and all that, you've had those areas being highlighted in the media. They are quite very far from accessing what is actually promulgated in the Vision 2030.
Sure.
And of course, the Big Four agenda, there is no way that even through the budgetary allocations that have been put there, mostly in the infrastructure, you're going to house all of the Kibra people into modern housing with clean water. You cannot house them and house the people in Mukuru and give them clean water and give them even proper sanitization in the Big Four agenda. So I think the Big Four agenda still falls short of actually achieving the spirit of Vision 2030. So we are quite so much behind, and even looking at the budgetary allocations that have been put there, we will not be able to achieve the Big Four agenda as aligned, as actually envisioned in the Vision 2030.
Well, I'm going to ask what you think about the budget, and we're going to delve into it.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know, maybe from Masu, what do you think at the backdrop of achieving, the government is trying to achieve the Vision 2030, but we have Corona, the COVID-19.
Yes.
Do you think it has affected maybe the vision or this program?
No, absolutely, absolutely. You cannot ignore the impact of this pandemic. We don't know where it came from. But also we question the strategies that our own government have used to combat this vaccine.
Yes.
I mean, I've always claimed that there is a relationship between COVID-19 and darkness that only Uhuru Kenyatta understands.
Okay.
And no one else will ever come to know about it. Part of achieving the Vision 2030 was a 24-hour economy, okay? So the 24-hour economy means we cannot be hampered by darkness. That is why other things such as a provision of electricity and lighting come into play. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, the president went down some very crazy path. Our neighbors, Tanzania, had almost 7% growth within the pandemic stage.
Yes.
At the same time, we had a slump in our economic growth because of the strategies. And we cannot claim that we have reported more deaths in Tanzania more than Kenya. Okay. So we cannot claim that the president died. So the COVID pandemic has caused problems. The work of politicians is to sell hope. The president has not been selling hope to Kenyans. Yes. As we speak, in the pandemic period, less than 3% of Kenyans have more than 100,000 in their bank account.
Okay.
Do you know, that's crazy. Where the 97% I'd walk up to 100 Kenyans and count them, a head count of 100 Kenyans on the streets out here. I will not find more than 5 of them having 100,000 in their bank accounts. That means if any of them fall sick at any point, whatever monies they had in whatever savings kit or whatever it is gone. So Kenyans are suffering. We will be dying of hunger before we die of COVID.
Okay.
So yes, it has affected us, but the strategies that our government has been using, even before that, are affecting us more than COVID.
Mr. Bossi, out of the 3.66 trillion, that is the budget amount allocated to a stimulus budget for COVID-19 is 26 billion, which is less than a percentage. Does it give confidence that this is a recovery budget? Is it reviving our economy? What do you think about it?
In terms of, you see, COVID-19 allocations cannot revive an economy. And what you're saying is that even if you're saying that you've allocated 26 billion shillings to COVID, or it's around 20 billion shillings there, you see, the biggest challenge we have is what will that money be used for? As I said, one of the limitations we have in Kenya is we put too much attention on the budget rather than on actual expenditure. We need to first review what happened of the previous budget. Where did the government get money to fight COVID, especially even the money that was lost through KEMSA? How was it accounted for, even before we talk about provisioning? Because then we will be able to predict whether even the allocations towards COVID is actually necessary based on the previous consumptions. And also we've not been, the public has not really engaged in terms of what is the surpluses or the deficits arising from the previous budget, and why are there the deficits? Because we've been told by the president that Kenya loses almost 2 billion shillings in a day. 2 billion shillings in a day, talking about 366, it's almost 700 billion shillings. That is almost a third of the budget, especially on the collections that the government is making through ordinary revenue. So in terms of the realistic of 26 billion, we can only say it is realistic whether we are assured on whether that money will actually be used for COVID-19. Because you have seen the major scandals surrounding. Probably it's just a provision for some people to squander the money. Sure. And of course, have we predicted even to what extent is COVID-19 going to take, and why do we need the 26 billion shillings?
Okay. Yes, we have
interesting. It's interesting. If I put something in there.
Yeah.
What is the percentage of people being killed by COVID-19 compared to other causes of death in Kenya?
Okay.
Very small percentage. It's less than 10%. I mean, even 10% is too much. So this is actually not the elephant in the room. I don't know why we even have to put much stress on it. I was watching the Euros the other day, and Hungary versus Portugal.
Okay.
And the stadium was full. These are some of the worst hit countries by COVID-19. The stadium was full, just proper adherence to the protocols, sanitizing, putting on masks, and all other sectors of the economy are up and revving. But in Kenya, we are still allocating other funds to combat COVID-19, which is not a threat. It is not a public health threat as we speak, compared to other cases. In fact, our biggest problems still exist in terms of malaria, HIV/AIDS, and sanitation diseases. Okay? So this is, to me, it's a by the way, if the government should be looking at it cleanly. And the budget that has been brought about, look at the stimulus packages. It was said by Yatan, quote, that we are allocating a stimulus package of about 30 billion for the recovery of the economy due to the COVID effect. And within, there is something for the youth. But it was not clearly put in that speech. But a later breakdown reveals that within that 30 billion, just about 3 billion is going to the youth-funded project. It's called Kazentani, which in my opinion, again, goes against the values of access or the provision of proper sustainable employment to Kenya. It's a short-term goal. It's Panadol to HIV. It does not address the problem. It masks the tears. It does not wipe them. So I have a problem with the decision making within the government.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Ronald Bossi, you are an auditor. Well, the budget 2021-2022 was available to the public. What do you think about it generally? Can it help us even achieve the Vision 2030?
Yeah, Philip, maybe before I respond that, I just want to talk about my colleague.
Yes.
I know he's a politician. For me, I'm an economist. And, Europe has vaccinated almost a bigger population. I think last time I saw they were advertising that they are now going to vaccinate people who are below 30 years of age. So you see that is tremendous progress. And you realize that people below 30 years are people with the lower exposure to COVID. COVID remains a bigger threat to any country in the world.
Yes.
And it's important that we have a proactive approach towards prevention in terms of preventing more disaster. Yes. You've had even the areas of Kisumu whereby it's going to be more disasters because as it goes into rural areas, that's where we have people with high exposure.
Yes.
The only challenge we have is what have we done in terms of even proactively respond. You see, the challenge as a country, we're only buying medication. We're only waiting to consume. Okay. And that's the problem with the African countries. We are only designating money to take it to the European countries so that they can give us a vaccine. You have heard people talking about herbal treatment which can be used. How much money have we just allocated? Even to attempt to get some even preventive medicine within our surroundings. How much have we allocated to KEMRI with regards to research, whereby we're going to have even some medication coming from Africa, probably to manage it, because COVID is with us for a long time. Even as much as we are putting in a budget to import drugs and even vaccines, we could also try to see how do we even put even a small percentage of 2-3 billion shillings into research, to research COVID within our own context. Where are we only waiting for the European countries and the other Western countries to give us now solutions to COVID-19? And yet this is also a local problem. And sometimes we might find even the medications that we are being given or the vaccines we are being given, probably they may not ever work in our context because we are in a different country. We have seen even how COVID is acting in Kenya.
Variations.
Yes. It's very different from how COVID is behaving in other countries. We might find even these vaccines we are getting are useless because they are not relevant to the context of our country. Okay. But there is very minimal budgetary provisions. We have not seen anything saying, by this budget on the COVID allocation, part of it is just to even unravel the mystery behind COVID. Before even we import the drug. But here we're just allocating money. We go and buy vaccines and bring and put it, but we're not making any provisions for our own research and investigation into this COVID.
So you think if we find ways through which we can mitigate the spread of corona, then
yes,
it can help us achieve our Vision 2030?
Of course it will, because it will save us actually having a lot of payments out of the country, which actually really impairs our balance of payment.
Must think this is not the elephant in the room.
Yeah, we are not thinking in the bigger picture terms. We're only thinking of buying, and so we've become more of a consumer, economy, whereby we're just buying and spending.
Okay. Must you want to say something?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you see, our president is not much of a champion of education and research. So I'm sorry to say, but the other time it was caught on camera claiming that the likes of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they haven't gone to school much, but they are running the world. So it tells you the ideology that our president has, that actually using money and lobbying and some little influence, you can change the world.
Okay.
But education is actually what can change the world. So maybe just to go back to our budget and the SDGs and Vision 2030. Yes. The World Bank claimed that Kenya is an agricultural country. And look, it's awesome because we are one of the countries that are there in the map in Africa, yet we don't have substantial mineral deposits to power us. We don't have petroleum, we don't have gold, large gold deposits like Congo. I mean, we depend on our sweat and labor and toil to create. And the best that a government can do for us is to appreciate this. So in Kenya, it is claimed that our economy depends on the weather. Okay. That if farmers can produce with good rain, then we can export more, we can try to sustain ourselves. And that is why I always claim that any person making the budget for Kenya
Yes.
should remember what was said there in the national anthem. Plenty be found within
Our borders.
our borders. And because if we want to claim
Yes.
that we can be dependent on what comes from outside, the budget is larger than it was put forth.
Okay.
The minister did not talk about the amount of money we are going to pay to service our loans.
Okay. In a nutshell, what you're trying to say, if we invest more in agriculture, then we have a comparative advantage.
How much was given to agriculture? 60 billion to agriculture, right? 297 to defense. We are not going to war. The only war we can have right now is hunger.
Yes.
But we give 297 billion to defense and 60.
Actually, we want to look at the budget itself. So maybe, yeah, we're coming to that.
It's crazy. I don't
So
know
boss, what do you
get
think about
started with
the budget in general, the 2021-2022 budget? Are we going to achieve our vision 2030? What do you look at the 2021-2022 budget and see generally?
In terms of the budget and alignment to the Vision 2030,
Yes.
it's just like a drop in the ocean. And one of it is you don't know whether you have a budget that is actually having a projection to borrow. You're saying that you can only raise 2 billion shillings, and you're expecting that you will raise close to almost another billion shillings through borrowings. Whether you are going to get external debt financing, that is something that you cannot tell. And you've seen how IMF has been very, very hard on Kenyans in terms of continued lending.
Yes.
But of course, when you budget like that, you are saying that you are going also to pay very high interest rates
Yes.
in terms of the borrowing.
Okay.
Because if then you don't get good credit from external borrowers, then you end up paying very high interest rates in terms of borrowing. And as a country, that is not very sustainable.
Okay.
So in terms of achievement of the budget, it's dependent on whether we are going actually to get favor before our creditors. So it's still also a question that needs to be answered, whether there is already a credit agreement that we have with the external borrowers. But then looking at it the way my colleague has said, the biggest challenge we have in Kenya is not the budget, it's the expenditure.
Okay.
Because even I wonder now that Kenya Meat Commission has been transferred to the Ministry of Defense. Now, is that budget of 297 billion going to the Ministry of Defense for the purpose of Kenya Meat Commission or for the purpose of running security issues? And why is Kenya Meat Commission being transferred to Ministry of Defense? And that is one of the areas that I said, I think we need also to realign our political system with our legal system, with our economic system. And you had the president saying that there have been corruption in the Kenya Meat Commission for many years. And you know, some people went to court and they got an order barring the president from transferring the assets of Kenya Meat Commission to the Ministry of Defense. But looking at it, there is some truths in it, whereby, you know, people are completely defrauding the Kenya Meat Commission and actually affecting the lives of farmers. And that warrants the president now to transfer that entity to the Ministry of Defense, maybe to get some level of efficiency. This is like a desperateness. The president is desperate to get that Ministry of that Kenya Meat Commission running without corruption. Probably Mumias Sugar Company needs also to be transferred to the Ministry of Defense, and then we will also have other state corporations that are stuck being transferred to the Ministry of Defense. So the solution to our economy is not through budgetary. Yes, the budget is good to some given extent. But you see, the problem is the expenditure, whereby the money is being allocated to some ministries, but then the money is being squandered by specific people, whereby, so the biggest element in this country is not in the area of budgetary. The biggest problem is in the area of expenditure, whereby we are losing 2 billion, that's 700 billion shillings, and that even that agricultural budget, probably, if you are saying 2 billion, and that is a place of a lot of high risk, and then we are saying even, you've seen the problem we have in the sugar sector, you've seen the problem we have in the maize sector, you've seen the problem we're having with the coffee, tea, you know.
Since so many people are, they do not like the budget that we have, they're complaining about the budget. Who are these stakeholders who are involved in the making of the budget?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll not directly address stakeholders, because I think stakeholders, one, as a citizen, you're a stakeholder. your consumption, your expenditure,
But like the
your...
specific people who sit on the high table discuss
At the
how...
end of the day, it's the political class and some financial experts who want to please them. Can I put it clearly like that? The political class and people who want to please them, they have information of what should be done. You saw in the budget there was 8 billion for industrial parks. Okay? This is a good move. I mean, it means the president is actually aware of the contribution of these the trade industry to our GDP. Okay? But is there conviction in the war to actually push this agenda through? The conviction lacks. When you look at the amount of money that is allocated to that, it just tells you that, yes, he knows it can work for us, but he's not convinced of the importance of this. He has other things in mind. He wants something that can be seen. He wants a railway that can pass in Naivasha for lions to step on and elephants. He allocates 27 billion for it from the railway to nowhere. That is stuck around somewhere in the middle of Masai Mara. There, and antelopes and gazelles are running on top of it, and it's not helping any of us. So, priorities for our leaders. Where is the priority for Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta?
No, like specifically the stakeholders in making the budget working process are, according to you, are the
political class and their minions.
The political elites.
And the financial experts who are out to please them. I mean, if you get Mr. Ronald here to advise the president on the economy, and he is not politically correct, he wants to state facts, he wants to give the reality. Tomorrow he'll be kicked out.
Let me get this from Mr. Ronald. Is there a process in budget making? Is there a process, and who are involved in this process?
Of course, the process of budget making, and you've seen that of course, the CS Treasury collects information from the various ministries. Because budget making is actually amalgamation of what various ministries have actually budgeted to have. So, of course, if you're making a budget, you must have budgets from counties, from ministries on what is their expenditure like. And then it's based on that you have the budgetary bill that is actually discussed in Parliament, sometimes in March. And then now we have the budget reading statement, of course, after which now was read by the CS, which was actually an output from the budgetary bill. And then now we have which is supposed to be discussed now by the parliamentary, which are doing that. So as it is now, the budget that was read by the CS is not yet to be operationalized. It has to be now discussed into Parliament, and the Parliament have their inputs, especially the feedback they have gotten from their constituents. And then they have through that, which is actually now, and send it to by the president, which is called now the finance bill. Once the budget has been read, it actually is transformed in what we call a finance bill that is then debated in the Parliament, and then it is ascended into and becomes the Finance Act, then becomes a law now to guide the government expenditure in the next financial year.
Thank you so much. We are going for a short break, but when we are back, we will be back with more right on the Insight 2021-2022 budget in line with the Vision 2030.
Hello, my name is David and welcome to Start Smart. I feel proud of myself. You should feel proud of yourself too for waking up this morning. It is not easy to wake up and work out, but you still did it. Great job. Thank you so much for joining me on Start Smart this morning for the workouts you have just done. I hope you have enjoyed yourself.
This kind God in your time, oh, this kind God, oh, blessed be your holy name. Come on, join me now. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Insight. We are reviewing the 2021-2022 budget in line with the Vision 2030. And of course, my guests are still here with me, Mr. Ronald Bossi. What do you make of the overwhelming emphasis being put on huge capital infrastructure projects than the rest?
Thank you again. And regarding the huge budget on the infrastructure project, it's good to have good infrastructure.
Okay.
Because you realize that that is going to unlock a lot of foreign direct investment. Mm-hmm. When people decide that this country is now very well established, mm-hmm. They have good roads, they have good systems in place, and there's no traffic congestion. Okay. It's a good thing. The only challenge I have with the huge budgetary provisions on infrastructure is we are putting a lot of emphasis on around Nairobi. Mm-hmm. And I always say that even no amount of money is going to be used to decongest the CBD. Okay. In terms of decongesting the central business district of Nairobi, the best strategy to use that is actually to devolve the government offices. Probably the strategy should be to actually move government offices within the environments that surrounds Nairobi. Especially if you could say that this our parliament sits in Kajiado, whereby if you look at part of Kajiado, there is massive property that is actually underutilized. Okay. And it's just maybe 20 minutes drive from the central business district. If you devolve government offices, and we say probably let the judiciary go to Machakos, probably to Tatu and the rest of the other places, to Konza, and you say let's also take the other government offices in Kiambu and all that. That will be actually an effective way to actually manage the congestion around the city. Okay. But we are putting billions of shillings through the express highway that is actually unnecessary, and still we have realized that the more infrastructure is put into place, the more congestion arises, because it allows for a lot of rural-urban migration, because people are moving towards better infrastructure. But we could actually try to develop the Nairobi environment so that we could ingest a lot of pressure from the town at a lesser cost than putting everything in one basket, trying to work on Nairobi. No amount of money or expenditure is actually going to see the CBD decongested. Then the other thing I would want to say, I know you want to move on, but the other issue I want to say is that, I always say under leadership, we always say that a leader is good by building roads. Yes, roads are good, but it's not going to be a very good key performer indicator for a leader. The biggest, almost 50% when you're evaluating a leader is behavioral change. And I always say, building roads, building infrastructure, factories, I always call them stroke of the pen leadership roles, which actually you're only taking people's money and borrowing and doing those things. That has a very relevant, very little effort that is being put into place. But the biggest leadership role we expect of our leaders is behavioral change. The way Kibaki transformed our mind, that you cannot wait for me on the road and you come and be given handouts. That was a behavioral change. The way he said that now people must stop hiding and start paying taxes, and helped raise our revenue from merely 300 billion shillings to almost 1.6 trillion. And that was a major leadership transformation that a leader can bring. The expectations that we have had from this regime, besides the infrastructural projects, we also expect that there will be corruption management, whereby we're trying to reduce our corruption by strengthening our institutions, by changing the mindset of civil servants to stop depending on handouts from people in order to enrich themselves and start actually working for the citizens. Now that Mr. Ronald Bose has spoken about the Kibaki's government, in 2008-2009, the total approved expenditure was around 759.8 billion
at that time. And of course, that is the time that we were, Kenya was launching the Vision 2030. You look at it, the budget in 2018, 2008, 2009, and now our current proposed expenditure, 3.66 trillion. Are we heading somewhere in achieving the Vision 2030?
You know, the expenditure of the government is increasing. It always increases in any country.
Yes.
That's normal. The Treasury is also making us believe that the inflation rate is controlled.
But are we heading somewhere?
But the question is does it measure up to the income increase for normal citizens? Yes, the inflation rate is fair, around 5 to 6%, to 7.5%.
Okay.
Which according to them is fair.
Okay.
But a question is your income increasing at that rate? Okay? So achieving these things, like Mr. Ronald said, infrastructure, very good. Yes, let's say we are heading somewhere.
Okay.
But there are gaps that need to be filled. There are pipes that need to be unclogged. Okay? I have a friend who had a contract with a top government corporation that I would not mention.
Okay.
And he's not been paid for months. The reason he's not been paid, an insider tells him, you know, you are now ready to sue us. That is what we wanted. So that we have to ship off some money to a lawyer. That's another portal for eating. Okay? Then after we've lost the case, we pay you. You see? And in the process of paying you, we also eat. Okay? So these are the pipes that need to be unclogged. Okay? Our concern is not the amount, even the now amounts of money that are being allocated to this project.
Okay.
It's whether these monies will actually end up into these projects.
Okay.
The SGR was inflated. Yes, it was inflated. But the cost-benefit analysis, does it bring out a profit for us? It was given to the Chinese to run, and they are combing it dry. Look at other projects like KQ. Okay, KQ, as we speak, turns over losses every year. Okay, and it's a growing concern because the government has to bail them out. Some private establishments, Jamii Bora Bank, was given a whooping amount, billions of money to cushion them from COVID. It just tells us that maybe they belong to some political fat cats. So as we are moving, the government should be moving with us. As they implement policies, especially where money is involved, they should ensure that this money actually end up in this project, Magufuli style.
Okay, sure,
tax
sure.
collection.
Yes.
Are we stealing this money?
Yes.
Magufuli put a system where Mama Mboga has through her phone, when she pays tax for her business stall, it ends up in the treasury directly, okay? And it will be used as part of the expenditure. But in our economy, it has to pass through some cartels who have to evolve chunks of it.
Okay.
You eat according to your level. Kila mbuzi anakula kwa urefu ya kamba yake. By the moment it ends up in treasury, it is so little, and that little, first of all, we have to think up of 67% goes to paying loans first.
Okay.
That we used to build those huge infrastructural things in the CBD that is bringing more congestion and putting our country into a clog, into some more quagmire and problems.
Yes, Mr. Boss Ronald. Well, almost $1 billion budget deficit because our proposed expenditure is 3.66 trillion, and we have a revenue of 2.04 trillion. Well, what is the impact of raising the debt ceiling of Kenya's? How does it affect our economy?
Of course, the impact is that we and the citizens will bear the consequences of paying the interest.
Okay.
Because, you see, with borrowing comes high debt levels.
Yes.
The biggest challenge with borrowing is, and we are borrowing majorly for infrastructure projects. And let me tell you, for most of the infrastructure projects, we actually, these infrastructure projects are carried out by foreigners. And especially by the Chinese government. And you realize that this is where the problem is. Yes, we are borrowing money from outside. It comes, it goes back, to pay the interest and also to pay the external contractors. And we are saying, yes, the GDP of Kenya is growing because of the infrastructure projects, but it's money that came in and went.
Okay.
in repayment. And you look at the SGR project, we've actually spent a lot of money, close to 400 billion shillings, but the money came back and went. Actually, probably it never came because it just passed to the other place to pay the contractors. At the same time, we are actually even incurring more losses because of its management. Probably the most ideal thing we do, sometimes I believe that as a country, we're putting too much emphasis in actually constructing and owning everything. For me, maybe if I was advising the government, the best way to approach the SGR thing is to tell the Chinese to construct the SGR at their own cost and give them 30 years lease or 20 years lease. They recover their money from it and go and leave the SGR for us. So we will actually realize the SGR project without spending a penny. But then they run it very efficiently and recover. But when you say that we are taking a debt to construct a railway, to construct the railway, and then now we are repaying the debt, and then we are not even managing because we don't have the technical expertise to manage the SGR, and then we are losing more as a country, and we are finding ourselves in a bigger challenge, and actually that deficit is not going to go away. So it's actually from frying pan to the fire. So we will just be smiling. Yes, we have good roads, we have the SGR here, but we have a huge debt, which some of it is unwarranted.
As our expenditure increases by day, is the government more innovative in increasing or widening the tax base? What do you think?
I think, like you said, that our revenue was 2.04 billion, something like that, right?
Yes.
Trillion, okay? That is the projected one. Last year, we shipped in about 1.5, 1.7. And right now, we are not even sure we are going to reach there. So those are just projections, okay? I think the government is not serious about widening the revenue collection portals, okay? They are more restricted to what was existing. Like I said before, agriculture is the backbone of our economy. If you want to get more out of the backbone of our economy, why don't you invest there more? Mining, petroleum companies, petroleum-dependent countries ensure that they streamline their petroleum sectors. The biggest challenge to Congo
So according to you, the government is not innovative enough?
It is not innovative. They want to depend on what has been there before.
Okay.
If ours is agriculture, why don't we completely subsidize maize production? Okay? Why don't we put in irrigation projects in areas that are arable but don't have water? Okay? So that we produce more. Why do we still have to have a contingency budget for hunger?
Okay.
Yet we are dependent on agriculture.
Okay.
Are we serious?
Okay. Let me get this from Ronald Bossi. Well, a month ago, the High Court issued stay orders on the minimum tax. How much of a setback is this, considering how much the government was banking on minimum tax to be able to raise revenue?
Talking about minimum tax, Ocheng, I think that is really a fallacy legislation. It's actually a law that nobody can imagine. Because, most of the businesses in this country are operating at a loss. Looking at supermarkets, the retail chain, somebody is doing a turnover of close to 5 billion, 10 billion shillings, but actually is making a loss of millions of shillings, probably a billion or whatever. You look at what KQ is going through. So you see, minimum tax, when you're saying that you are taxing all businesses 1% of do you want these companies to go to the bank, borrow loans, and finance the minimum tax? You see, that is something that it's actually really, really a very poor legislation that is coming in. And I hope and pray that that law will never be passed in this country.
Okay.
It's actually really doesn't have a basis. And that is even makes me doubt the capacity of some of our legislators to help us, even do they even participate in business? Because what is the logic of saying, I want to tax everybody at 1%?
So on the same note, do you think it has affected the MSMEs?
Of course, the small businesses, they usually feel the pinch of these big decisions that are made by people without proper research, okay? For example, you have to obtain goods for your business. You have to procure goods, okay? At every adjustment, every financial adjustment done by the government has a ripple effect, okay? Such that by tomorrow, I'll be the first person to announce that probably I'm selling this pair of shoes at 2,400 shillings and not 1,900 shillings, okay? The impact is that less people will be able to afford this shoe. I'll do more, less business. The government will collect less tax. So let us at least, let it be holistic. Let us consider everything.
Okay, sure. Mr. Ronald, effective 30th of June this year, the window period created by the VAT Act of 2013 on petroleum products lapses. So effectively, we should have a VAT at 16% on petroleum products. How much of a knock-on effect is this on Kenyans, and what kind of remedy can we give?
You know, if you look at the way people behave in developing countries in Kenya, it's like we are a sheep earmarked for slaughter, and we are just being moved into slaughterhouse. We are a very vulnerable people, by the way, because we are like hostage by the political class and the government. And you look at some of those legislations, is tax more and tax more and tax more. And I had a clip, and the reason why the government is being forced to that situation is because of the heavy borrowing, and because we are under the control of the IMF, and you always see that every time IMF is putting pressure on government, you tax people, you tax them, so that you are able to raise enough money to support that you can be able to repay our debts. So we're becoming more captive, and actually we are bearing the consequences of increasing debt. So taxes are going to become, and they become so abnormal. And I always say it is like when you're doing your own business and you're charging too much and giving little value. So every time customers, you get very little customers, you think now you have to charge those few customers so that you make more money. And the more you charge, the more you lose customers. And that is what is happening in the Kenyan tax system, because they are thinking, the more we tax people, the more we make. But you see, the more they tax SMEs, the more SMEs close. The more you increase taxes, the more businesses close. The more you reduce even the taxes that you are able to collect. So the government needs to reconsider its policies towards tax. If you look at it, we're paying a corporate tax of 30%, there's VAT of 16%, there's withholding taxes, there's customs. You import a car in this country, you will pay a car that is more than 7 years old for the price of a new car that you can buy in foreign countries, and yet we are a developing country. You know, I was surprised last time I'm out of the country and I asked the price of cars. A new car is the same old car you will buy here in Kenya because of the customs. But we have not developed a very good strategic position to try to encourage local assemblies and create jobs. So actually we are very, very vulnerable as a citizens because of this increasing taxes on various products and even now fuel, and you're going to see more and more and more, because we have, the more we borrow, the more we are supposed to raise more money to appease our creditors, at the same time to finance our inflated budgets. So as citizens, we're in trouble, and it seems like the parliament will not help us because trust me that we had a budget, it's supposed to go through the parliament for debate. There will be very little change. Because if the minimum tax passed through the parliament and there were no checks and balances, and then you can really 100% expect that the budget will pass without major variations affecting the common man.
Let me ask Masu this. You're very contemptuous about the proposed budget 2021-2022. If you are the person, if you're among the stakeholders who are in the budget making process, what actually will you do differently to ensure that this government immensely contributes in the third MTP, that is in the big four agendas, to achieving the Vision 2030?
Let me first agree with my colleague here
about
being hostage to the political class. And it is something that will not change very soon. I mean, we have to find a solution through it, okay? It's like an escarpment somewhere, and we have to build a road through it because we're not moving it, anytime soon. So Kenyans are actually looking at the eyes of politicians. It's like a child looking to the mother. It was like the Israelites or the Hebrews are looking to Pilate, and whether he will decide he will crucify Barabbas or crucify Jesus. And whoever will be crucified, the people are good with it. If you can remember that story, you realize that Pilate actually gave the freedom for the people to choose to crucify the right man, or the wrong man in this case, and let the criminal loose. Okay? So the people, they are at the mercy of the politicians. And like gamblers say, you play the man, you don't play the game. And so the politicians have mastered this craft. So in the budgeting of, in the 2021-2022 budget projections that have been released recently by our finance minister, I would propose that more focus would be placed on revenue generating sectors of the economy than on huge projections. I mean, it just creates a gap. I mean, yes, we have the SGR, okay? But how many people in Kenya are going to be able to amass even the amount of capital or even the borrowing credibility to invest in a business that will properly utilize SGR? So that is a gap that has not been addressed. Let us first go look, for example, industrial parks, 8 billion to it. A good move. So can we double on that? Can we double on these revenue generating projects and be less about, let me just call them what they are, the Uhuru's legacy. Yes, can we be less about Uhuru's legacy and more on generating value for our people? Meeting our 2030 SDGs means that we look at all of them, one after the other. Healthcare. Do we have universal healthcare? If you are sick, does it mean you go bankrupt if you treat yourself? Do we have proper housing? With proper housing comes proper sanitation, where you have clean water, electricity, okay? So are we addressing these things? And that is actually what we are pushing as an agenda in our organization, Vijana Economic Front.
Okay. So actually, according to you, if you were given, now you're part of the stakeholders.
The task force, yes.
Exactly. So how much will be the budget this year, 2021?
No, I don't want to go into the specifics of the amount because, but I would focus less on the amounts that we will need to borrow to fulfill our budgetary projections, and more on what we can produce on our own.
Will you have that
and
deficit?
The strategies to producing
will you have
that.
Deficit of around a
Of course, I would downscale that budget, because it is up there, so that we can get money from elsewhere, some loan to fulfill it. But even the revenue that we collect that we could use to fund it, we are using it already to pay other loans. A huge chunk of it, almost 3/4 of that amount.
Let me hear this from Mr. Ronald Bossi. We have some countries borrow more than their GDP, and of course Japan has always been mentioned in that several times. Kenya is also borrowing more than its GDP. What is different between us and those countries?
Yeah, I think it's borrowing for the right reason.
Yes.
To unlock value.
Okay.
But when we are borrowing to squander and repay debts, then it is sustainable. Maybe I can just give some advice, maybe in terms of how the government should borrow and allocate its resources. This government, especially the Jubilee government, has done some remarkable things, if I will not forget. One, this government has brought up the CBC system, has transformed our education system. If you look at part of this, especially Africa, most of the African countries, even South Africa being part of it, they are stuck with the education system that is not very productive to its people. You are told that in Africa, the average age is 19 years. So we need to really unlock our labor capital through a proper education system. So the CBC system is, if well financed, then it can be a very good project for Kenya, because with the growth of population, it can be a very good attraction for more investment, because there is available of labor capital. The other issue that this government did very well is the demonetization, so that you are able to actually ensure that the money that is in the economy is clean money. You reduce on money laundering activities, and make sure that everybody is working for money, because you realize that prior to that, property prices were rising, were inflated, because there was just money that was flowing on through dirty money. But now, moving forward, what you need to do in terms of education, you realize that education in Kenya, if you have a child who is going to school, it's actually a fraud. You can pay so much thousands of shillings in the private schools, and you're not getting value. And yet government has huge resources, especially in terms of property, that it can do very good education systems. It can build computer labs in order to support the CBC system. So if the government can invest in modern computer labs to support good government education through government institutions, it is able to reduce the cost of education in Kenya. The other issue that the government can borrow to do is to unlock the the health sector. You see, the health sector, if you are actually constructing a hospital today,
Yes.
you actually get very little capital deductions in terms of investment deductions. But if the government can allow investment in the private sector to invest in education, in healthcare, by giving tax incentives, especially capital deductions, to healthcare developers, it's actually going to spur investment into healthcare. Today, a common mwananchi cannot afford healthcare, proper healthcare. If you go to some of the government hospitals, especially the district hospital, I was in one of the hospitals and it's locked actually at night. A more district hospital is actually locked, it's not working at night. So you have to walk and then end up in a private hospital where you are going to fleeced. The government needs to actually invest in the agricultural industry to unlock the potential. Why are we importing maize in this country when there is vast property in the North Rift, in Western, in most of properties idle, you drive?
Mr. Ronald Bossi, I think we are short of time, so I'll give Mr. Masu some time to give closing remarks because he's a politician. Of course, I'll give you also time to make your closing remarks as we come to the end of the show.
As I conclude, first of all, I want to lash out at our government for failing to properly chaperone the economy. They have let cartels and demagogues to continue controlling the country and holding it hostage. So we should actually start changing this. I'm sorry that our parliament has not helped much. Kenyans are suffering because of that. The parliament is in some pockets. The money is in the political sector, not in business and other areas of the economy. And that kind of transformative leadership is what we aim to give the youth. So as Vijana Economic Front, we hope to continue educating youth on actually what they should expect from the government. And in 2022, as there will be a complete shift of government, that is exactly what we are doing. So we are going for a clean sweep, a proper shift in Langata constituency, which will be used as an example to the whole nation of what 2020 on what leadership should be post 2022. And that is why I am on the ballot in Langata in 2022, and I already declare danger to my opponents.
Okay. Mr. Ronald, you can give your closing remarks, but of course you can also tell us what was the importance of Huduma number as well as part of your closing remark. Yeah,
thank you. In terms of my closing remarks, I want to say that we have 1 year for the Jubilee government for the Jubilee government.
Yes.
As citizens of this country, we must listen to the politicians with our minds, not with our tribes. We must make conscious decision to place very good leadership in the offices. I listen to most of these leaders who are campaigning. They have no idea on how they are going to transform this country economic-wise, especially the middle income earning people in this country, the elite. We need to actually guide now our constituents, our mothers, our parents, and they need to understand what every politician is saying about transformation of economy of this country. And based on that, we make conscious decision in terms of who do we elect into office. Because of being disconnected with the political the economic promises from the politicians, we end up in a very bad position and we keep on complaining for the next 5 years. If we do that, then we are able to transform our country. For our parliamentarians, I will tell them that to continuously listen to the voices of their constituents, try to inform the president and maybe the policies that are being made, so that for the benefit of the people. And in terms of Huduma number, I hoped that this number will make me only have one number and throw away my ID and everything, and through that number I can be able to access that service. That we have not realized. I'm still waiting to see what the government says in terms of what was the essence actually of registering for Huduma number and actually actualizing, and even how are they going to update data, because since then people have passed on, people have been born, people have gone past 18 years and all that. How are they going to update that information?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in GBS TV. You know very well that when it's Friday, 8 p.m., it is time for The Insight with me, Eugene Ochieng, where we give insights on political issues, current affairs, and issues that affect you directly or indirectly. And of course, our social media handles are GBS, at GBS TV Africa, at Eugene Ochieng. That is on Facebook, Twitter, and of course, you can get us on Twitter. You can also SMS us using the SMS line, that is 21144. Tonight, we have had gentlemen, that is Ronald Bosi and Masu. And of course, good night and be well. Till next Friday, have a good night.